In this lecture, we will be looking at the principles of communicable diseases epidemiology. My name is Dr. Jesse. Epidemiology is normally studied in public health, where a health official tends to look at how to understand diseases dynamics, especially in an epidemic or a pandemic situation, so they are able to deal with them. So, epidemiology is simply the study of the distribution and determinant of health related states and even events in a population, and how to apply this study to control health problems. So, in epidemiology, we have three main strands, which we call the epidemiologic strand. We have the host, the agent, and the environment. The host are normally the individual where the disease normally affects, and so we want to look at the host demographic characteristics and then his biological features and even some socio-economic characteristics of the host. That is not all. Then in the agent, that is normally the etiological organism or agent that is responsible for causing the diseases. We will also be interested in looking at its biological properties, its physical properties as an agent, its chemical properties also as an agent, the nutrient and even the mechanical and social agents that are considered as agents that are part of the epidemiological trend. Then we have the environment. The environment, look at the physical environment, the biological environment, and the social environment. But I must emphasize that the infectious disease model, these three come together to cause the diseases. So we are looking at the host itself, the pathogen, or otherwise the biological agent or the microorganisms that are capable of causing diseases, and in the environment that the host finds him or herself. It's important to look at some terminologies that will be helpful even as nurses in our training, so we are confident when we have to do with any infectious diseases. The first thing that we want to look at is what a communicable disease is. A communicable disease is an illness that is most of the time due to a specific biological infectious agent or even its toxic product that is capable of being directly or indirectly transmitted from man to man, or from animal to man, or even from animal to animal, or even from the environment through the air, water, food, etc. to man. These agents are very, very important because they assist in helping us to understand diseases dynamics of a lot of infectious diseases. How are these important? Why is it important to study communicable disease epidemiology? Studying communicable disease epidemiology assists us to understand the changes or patterns of a particular infectious disease. In this case, I would liken it to the COVID-19 infection that has come, that is causing a lot of fear, and everybody is afraid. Knowledge about these also assists us to discover new infections from hotspot and potential hotspots, and it also offers us a clue to know the possibility of how some chronic other diseases could have an infective origin and how they could be understood. Understanding of this would also be linked to what an infection is. As a nurse, you should be able to have a rough idea what an infection is. In fact, an infection is simply the entry and subsequent development or the multiplication of an infectious agent, mostly a microorganism, in the body of a man or an animal. But I must be quick to note that an infection does not always lead to illness. Some infections could start, but then they could not be able to assist in producing clinical symptoms of a particular disease. There are several levels of infections, otherwise gradient of infections, that a health professional must arm himself with. These are divided into four main pillars. We have the colonization stage, the subclinical or inapparent infection stage, the latent infection stage, and the manifest or clinical infection stage. The colonization stage will start with the organism trying to attach himself to the host either through the skin or by an organ for it to start an infection. For Staphylococcus aureus, before they can establish a boil, the bacteria would have to attach itself onto one's skin. Or even for the COVID-19 viral infection that has come, that everybody is afraid, the virus, once it enters into an individual, will normally have to attach itself to the lower epithelial cells before they could start an infection. Then we have the subclinical or an apparent infection stage, where the microorganisms could be in the body, but it will take a while before they can start an infection. Then we have the latent infection stage. There could be some microorganism that could enter into an individual, and they'll be there for a long time looking for the right time to start an infection. And we could also have the manifest or the clinical infection stage, the one that we all know, where when the microorganisms come into your system, they begin to elicit clinical symptoms. Let's look at contamination and infestation. Contamination is simply the presence of an infectious agent on a body surface or on one's clothing, bedding, toys, or even surgical instruments. Others can also be on one dress or other articles or substances, including water and food. Once they get into this system, they can get into one's body. Let's look at infestation. Infestation, on the other hand, is the lodgement, development, and the reproduction of arthropods on the surface of one body or in his clothing. So in the past, we used to have an experience of lice and even itch mite on one's body. These we call infestation. But then this term could also be used to describe the invasion of one's gut by a parasitic infection, normally Ascaris or hookworm. Contagious disease. A contagious disease is the one that is transmitted through contact. An example can be scabies, trachoma, STDs, leprosy, or even COVID-19. COVID-19 is so contagious because it is easily transmitted from one person to the other, and the rate is very fast, and we say it is contagious. Host. A host is a person or animal that affords subsistence or help or lodgement to an infectious agent under normal conditions. So they include an obligate host, the definitive host, or primary host, the intermediate host, and the transport host. But it's important that without these hosts, the microorganism or the etiological agent of a disease can never get to its main host. And so we say we also need to understand what they are, and so we can help prevent infection. The vector of an infection. An insect or any living carrier that transports an infectious agent from an infected individual or its waste to a susceptible individual, its food, or its immediate surrounding is known as a vector of an infection. Here, both biological and mechanical transmissions could be encountered. A reservoir is any person, animal, arthropod, plant, soil, or even a substance, or even a combination of all these things in which an infectious agent normally lives and multiplies. We are saying this would depend primarily on how it can survive and its ability to even reproduce in such a manner that it can be transmitted easily to another susceptible host. It is the natural habitat of the infectious agent in most cases. Incidence and prevalence of infectious diseases. An incidence of an infectious disease is the number of new cases in a given time period that is expressed as a percentage infected per year, which case is a cumulative incident, or the number per person time of an observation, that is called the incident density. This in fact is different from the prevalence of an infectious disease, which is the number of cases at a given time that is expressed as a percentage at a given time. So we are saying prevalence is a product of an index X duration of a disease, and it is of little interest if an infectious disease is of short duration, example measles. But we are saying it may be of interest if an infection or infectious disease is of a long incubation period, example a chronic hepatitis B. An epidemic is usually the occurrence in a community of a disease or a specific health related behavior or even an event that clearly is in excess of an expected occurrence. These can either be divided into hyperendemic or holoendemic. A hyperendemic is normally expressed when the disease is constantly present at high incidence or prevalent rate and affect all age groups equally. And then we have holoendemic, which is also a higher level of infection beginning early in life and affecting most of child population, leading to a state of equilibrium such that the adult population shows evidence of the disease much less commonly than we occur in children. And this an example can be found in that of malaria. Sporadic. The word sporadic means scattered about. The cause occur irregularly, haphazardly, from time to time, and they are generally infrequent. However, a sporadic disease could be the starting point of an epidemic when the conditions are favorable for its spread. An attack rate is a proportion of non-immune exposed individuals who become clinically ill, and they are different from the primary or index or secondary cases where the person who comes into contact and infect a population is the primary case. Those who subsequently contact the infections are secondary cases. The further spread is described as a wave or regeneration. Zoonosis. Zoonosis is an infection that is transmitted under natural conditions from an animal vertebrate to man. Whereas an epizootic is an outbreak of a disease in an animal population. So we also have the enzootic, which is an endemic occurring in an animal. Nosocomial infections are normally hospital-acquired infections. These are infections that one could easily acquire at the hospital. Opportunistic infections. This is an infection by an organism that takes the opportunity provided by a defect in a host defense. So when your immune systems are compromised, you could easily have an opportunistic infection. So people who have HIV, because their immune system are compromised, they easily have infection that otherwise their system could have prevented. Termination of all transmission of infection by stimulation of agent also can come through surveillance and containment, but eradication is the absolute process. An ill or non-phenomenal restricted to the termination of infection from a worldwide point of view. Thank you very much.